Imagine you get the raise you've been waiting for. Maybe your salary goes from $80,000 to $100,000. Your first thought is probably simple. Life should feel easier now. You can save more, invest more, pay off debt faster, maybe take a better vacation once in a while. But then something strange happens. A few months later, your life doesn't feel much different. You move into a slightly nicer apartment. You replace the old car. You start eating out more often because you can afford it. A few subscriptions get added. You travel a little more. You stop checking prices quite as carefully. None of these decisions feels reckless. That's what makes this so dangerous. You didn't suddenly become irresponsible. You just started making decisions based on your new income instead of your old one. And slowly, the extra money disappears. Then you get another raise, and the same thing happens again. This is one of the strangest problems with making more money. Your income can rise without your sense of financial freedom rising with it. You can earn more and still feel like you need more. You can afford a nicer car and still worry about money. You can live in a bigger house and still feel like you're falling behind. And eventually, you may reach a point where the things you once considered luxuries simply become normal. That's when something important has changed. Not your salary, your definition of enough. The question isn't whether you should enjoy the money you worked hard to earn. Of course you should. The real question is what happens when every increase in income creates another reason to increase your spending. Because if every raise becomes another upgrade, another payment, another subscription, or another expense you now consider necessary, then making more money doesn't necessarily make you freer. It can simply make your lifestyle more expensive. And once that happens, the next raise doesn't feel like an opportunity anymore. It feels like something you need just to keep up with the life you've already built. Think about the first home you were genuinely excited to afford. Maybe it was a small apartment with enough space for you, a decent kitchen, and a quiet place to come home to. At the time, it felt like a big upgrade. Then your income increased. Suddenly, that same apartment started feeling cramped. The neighborhood didn't seem as attractive anymore. You began looking at places with an extra bedroom, a better view, a newer kitchen, maybe a nicer building. Again, none of this seems unreasonable. You worked harder. You earn more. Why shouldn't you enjoy something better? That's the trap. The problem isn't upgrading your life. The problem is when every upgrade quietly becomes your new minimum. The car you once considered expensive becomes ordinary. The restaurant you once visited for special occasions becomes a normal Friday night. The vacation that once felt luxurious becomes the standard you expect every year. And the strange part is that you don't necessarily become happier. You simply become accustomed to a higher level of spending. Psychologists sometimes describe this as adaptation. You get used to improvements surprisingly quickly, and what once felt special can eventually feel completely normal. That's why someone can look at their life from 5 years ago and think, I had so much less back then, while also looking at their current life and thinking, I still need more. The finish line keeps moving. And this is where making more money can become complicated. A higher income gives you more choices, but it also gives you more opportunities to raise your expectations. You don't just ask, can I afford this? You start asking, why shouldn't I have this? And that question can quietly change your entire financial life, because once a luxury becomes part of your normal routine, giving it up doesn't feel like losing a luxury. It feels like losing something you're entitled to. That's how enough moves. Not all at once. It moves one upgrade at a time. And if you're not careful, you can spend years increasing your income only to discover that your lifestyle has been increasing right alongside it. Now imagine someone gets a $20,000 raise. At first, it feels like a major financial breakthrough. They look at the extra money and think about all the things it could do. They could increase their retirement contributions, build a larger emergency fund, pay down debt, maybe even save for a home. But instead, the changes happen slowly. The old car gets replaced because the new payment is manageable. The apartment gets upgraded because the new rent is only a little higher. Eating out becomes more common because cooking every night feels unnecessary. A few services get added because they're convenient. Then comes the nicer vacation. Then the better furniture. Then the more expensive phone. None of these purchases looks like a financial disaster. And that's exactly why the raise can disappear without you noticing. There is rarely one huge decision that destroys the extra income. It's usually a collection of small decisions that each feel perfectly reasonable. The car payment is manageable. The apartment is affordable. The vacation is only once a year. The subscriptions are only a few dollars each. The restaurant bill isn't that bad. But add everything together, and the raise that looked like a path toward financial freedom has quietly become the money funding a more expensive lifestyle. This is why lifestyle inflation can be so difficult to recognize. Your spending doesn't suddenly feel excessive because your income has increased alongside it. Instead, your brain keeps adjusting the definition of normal. What used to feel like an occasional treat becomes routine. What used to feel unnecessary becomes convenient. And what used to feel expensive becomes something you believe you deserve. Then another raise arrives. And instead of creating a bigger gap between what you earn and what you spend, it creates another opportunity to upgrade. That's the cycle. Earn more, spend more, adjust, repeat. And if you keep following that pattern for years, your income can grow dramatically while your financial position barely changes. The goal isn't to reject every improvement. The goal is to make sure your income increases faster than your lifestyle does. Because if your lifestyle captures every extra dollar before that dollar has a chance to build something for your future, then the raise didn't really make you richer. It simply made your more expensive life possible. There is a question people ask all the time when they're considering a major purchase. Can I afford it? It's a useful question, but by itself, it isn't enough because something can fit inside your monthly budget and still change your financial life in ways you didn't expect. Take a car. Maybe the payment fits comfortably within your income. You can make the payment every month without struggling. On paper, everything looks fine, but the payment isn't the entire decision. There's insurance, maintenance, fuel, registration, repairs, and more importantly, there's the money that payment can no longer do something else with. That last part is easy to miss. If an extra $700 leaves your account every month, you're not only spending $700, you're also giving up whatever that $700 could have become if you had saved or invested it instead. The same thing happens with housing. A bigger home might be affordable based on your income. But a larger mortgage can also mean higher taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, furniture, and other costs that continue long after the excitement of moving in has disappeared. This doesn't mean expensive things are automatically bad. Sometimes a larger home is exactly what your family needs. Sometimes a reliable car is worth paying more for. Sometimes spending more genuinely improves your life. The point is simply that affordability is not the same thing as value. A lender can tell you what you're capable of borrowing. A calculator can tell you what fits inside your budget, but neither one can tell you what the purchase does to your future choices. That's a decision only you can make. So before you ask whether you can afford something, ask a second question. What will this purchase make harder? Will it make investing harder? Will it make saving harder? Will it make changing jobs harder? Will it make an unexpected expense more stressful? Will it make you depend more heavily on your next paycheck? Those questions don't mean you should live as cheaply as possible. They simply force you to look beyond the price tag, because the real cost of a purchase isn't always what you pay today. Sometimes it's the flexibility you quietly give up tomorrow. There is another reason people spend more as they earn more, and it has very little to do with what they actually need. It has to do with what they want other people to think. Maybe you get promoted and suddenly your old car feels out of place in the parking lot. Maybe your friends start moving into nicer neighborhoods and your perfectly comfortable home begins to feel embarrassing. Maybe everyone around you starts taking expensive vacations and staying home starts feeling like you're somehow falling behind. Nobody has to tell you to upgrade. You simply start noticing what everyone else has. And that's when spending can become less about improving your life and more about protecting an image. You buy the nicer car because it feels like proof that you've made it. You choose the expensive restaurant because you don't want to be the person who says no. You upgrade your clothes because you want to look like you belong in the room. Again, none of these choices is automatically wrong. There is nothing wrong with enjoying beautiful things or spending money on experiences that matter to you. The problem begins when the purchase is mainly solving an emotional problem. You aren't buying the watch because you love watches. You're buying it because you want people to notice. You aren't moving because your home no longer works for your family. You're moving because your current address doesn't feel impressive enough anymore. You aren't taking the trip because you genuinely need the experience. You're taking it because everyone else seems to be going somewhere. And the strange thing about status spending is that it works for a moment. People notice, you get compliments, you feel successful. Then the excitement fades. The expensive thing becomes normal. And eventually, you need another upgrade to recreate the same feeling. That's an expensive cycle, because approval has a very short lifespan, but the payment can last for years. This is why one of the most useful financial questions you can ask is surprisingly simple. Would I still want this if nobody else could see it? If the answer is yes, that's valuable information. Maybe it genuinely improves your life. But if the answer is no, you may have just discovered something important. You weren't really buying the object. You were buying the reaction, and reactions disappear much faster than bills do. Imagine two people earning the same salary. They both make good money. They both have stable jobs. From the outside, their lives look almost identical. But one person has built a lifestyle that requires nearly every dollar they earn. The other has deliberately kept some distance between what they make and what they need. That difference may not be visible at first. But then something unexpected happens. One of them gets an opportunity to leave a stressful job. The salary is lower, but the work is healthier, and the long-term opportunity is better. The person with high monthly obligations can't seriously consider it. The mortgage is large. The car payment is large. The lifestyle has become expensive. Walking away from the paycheck would mean immediately changing everything. The other person can at least consider it. Not because they earn more, because they need less. That is the invisible value of financial margin. Money doesn't only buy things. Sometimes it buys options. It gives you the ability to wait instead of rushing, to negotiate instead of accepting, to leave instead of staying, to handle an unexpected expense without putting it on a credit card, to take a few months to figure out what comes next. And this is why some purchases cost more than the amount printed on the receipt. A recurring expense can quietly reduce the number of choices available to your future self. That's especially important with lifestyle upgrades because many of them aren't one-time purchases. A bigger house isn't just the closing price. A nicer car isn't just the sticker price. A more expensive lifestyle isn't one bill. It's a collection of commitments that continue asking for money month after month. And once those commitments become normal, reducing them can be surprisingly difficult. This doesn't mean you should reject every expense that isn't strictly necessary. Life is meant to be lived, but when you make a major financial decision, it is worth asking one question that most people skip. How much freedom will this decision leave me with? Because the goal of earning more isn't simply to create a life that looks more expensive. It's to create a life where you have more choices. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do with a higher income is not buy the upgrade. It's keep the option. For a long time, most people are taught to recognize wealth by looking at what someone owns. The expensive car, the large house, the designer clothes, the luxury vacation, the watch that costs more than some people's annual salary. These things are easy to see, so we naturally assume they tell us something about the person's financial position. But they don't tell us nearly as much as we think. A person can drive an expensive car and still have very little financial breathing room. Someone can live in a beautiful house and have most of their income committed to keeping that house. Someone can take impressive vacations and still have almost nothing invested for the future. None of that means they're doing something wrong. It simply means looking wealthy and being financially secure are two different things. Actual financial strength is often much quieter. It might look like a paid-off car, a healthy emergency fund, a retirement account that keeps growing in the background, investments that don't need constant attention, debt that is manageable, monthly expenses that leave room to breathe. From the outside, none of this looks particularly exciting. There may be no dramatic reveal, no expensive logo, no new car sitting in the driveway, but there is something incredibly valuable hiding underneath it. Choice. When your fixed expenses are reasonable, you have more room to respond when life changes. You can handle a repair. You can survive a slower month. You can consider a different job. You can invest when an opportunity appears. You can help someone you care about without immediately putting yourself under pressure. That's a form of wealth that doesn't photograph well. And that's why comparing yourself to what other people own can be so misleading. You're comparing your financial reality with someone else's visible spending. You can see their house. You can't see their obligations. You can see their car. You can't see their monthly budget. You can see the vacation. You can't see what they sacrificed to pay for it. Real wealth often looks boring because its purpose isn't to impress anyone. Its purpose is to give you room. And the more you understand that, the less interested you become in proving how much you can afford. You start becoming more interested in how much freedom your money can create. Your salary is an important number, but it doesn't tell you how much freedom you actually have. Imagine two people both earning $150,000 a year. On paper, they look almost identical. Same income, similar careers, similar age. But one person has built a lifestyle that costs $11,000 every month. The other lives comfortably on $7,000. That $4,000 difference may not look dramatic when you look at 1 month, but over a year, it becomes $48,000. And over several years, that gap can become the difference between constantly needing your next paycheck and having real financial breathing room. This is why income alone can be a misleading way to measure financial progress. What matters is the gap between what comes in and what your lifestyle requires. Think of that gap as your freedom margin. The larger it is, the more options you have. You can save more, invest more, pay down debt faster, build cash reserves, or simply give yourself room when something unexpected happens. But when your lifestyle expands until it consumes almost everything you earn, your freedom margin becomes tiny, and suddenly a high income can feel surprisingly fragile. You might have a six-figure salary and still feel nervous about taking time off. You might have a great job and still feel trapped because too many bills depend on that paycheck arriving every 2 weeks. That is the part people often miss. Making more money only creates financial freedom if some of that additional money remains available to build it. Otherwise, your income is simply supporting a larger version of your existing lifestyle. So instead of asking only, how much do I make? Start asking, how much of what I make do I get to keep? And even more importantly, how much of what I keep is being turned into future choices? That is a much more useful way to look at financial progress, because a bigger paycheck can improve your life. But the gap between your income and your spending is what gives that bigger paycheck somewhere productive to go. Here's a strange situation that happens more often than people expect. Someone starts earning significantly more money, yet somehow they still feel like they can't slow down. They get a bigger paycheck, but the pressure doesn't disappear. Instead, the lifestyle grows around it. The nicer apartment becomes normal. The newer car becomes normal. Eating out several times a week becomes normal. The expensive vacation becomes something they now feel they should be able to afford every year. And because each decision made sense on its own, they don't necessarily see a problem. But look at the pattern from a distance. Income rises, then spending rises, then the new spending becomes normal, then income needs to rise again. And the cycle starts over. This is how someone can earn a very good income and still feel financially trapped. The problem isn't necessarily that they're spending recklessly. It's that their lifestyle has become dependent on their current income. That creates a strange kind of pressure. You don't need more money because you're buying absurd things. You need more money because the life you've built now requires more money. And that distinction matters, because once your expenses become your baseline, a raise no longer feels like progress. It simply feels like catching up. You might even start thinking, once I reach the next income level, then I'll finally feel comfortable. But then you reach it, and somehow comfort moves again. This is why the idea of enough matters so much. If you never decide what enough looks like, your income can keep increasing without ever creating the feeling you're looking for. There will always be a nicer neighborhood, a newer car, a better vacation, a larger home, a more impressive version of your current life. And none of those things is automatically wrong. The danger is believing that the next upgrade will finally create the security that your current lifestyle keeps taking away. So the real goal isn't to stop earning more. It's to make sure that earning more actually improves your financial position. When your income rises, your investments should have a chance to rise too. Your cash reserves should grow. Your debt should become easier to eliminate. And your freedom margin should get wider, because if every raise immediately becomes another expense, you're not really moving toward freedom. You're simply moving the finish line. What if the next time your income increases, you don't immediately change your lifestyle? Not forever, just for a moment. Instead of seeing the extra money as permission to spend more, you see it as an opportunity to create more distance between what you earn and what you need. That distance is where financial progress happens, because when every additional dollar gets absorbed by a new expense, your financial life doesn't become much stronger. So create a rule before the next raise arrives. Decide in advance that part of every increase in income will improve your lifestyle, but another part will improve your future. Maybe you increase your retirement contribution. Maybe you build your emergency fund. Maybe you pay down expensive debt. Maybe you increase your regular investment. The exact split doesn't have to be perfect. The important part is that your lifestyle doesn't automatically receive every extra dollar. This works because decisions made before the money arrives are often easier than decisions made after you've already imagined what you could buy. If you get a raise and immediately start looking at larger apartments, newer cars, and expensive vacations, the extra money already feels spoken for. But if your financial system moves part of that raise automatically, the decision is made before lifestyle has a chance to negotiate. And that's powerful. You're not relying on willpower every month. You're building a system that quietly protects your progress. You can still enjoy the raise. You can still improve your life. You can still spend more on things that genuinely matter. But now the raise has two jobs. It improves today and strengthens tomorrow. Over time, that changes the direction of your financial life. Instead of your lifestyle constantly chasing your income, your assets begin growing alongside it. And eventually, you reach a point where another raise doesn't make you feel like you need a bigger life. It simply gives you more choices. That is the real goal. Not to make more money so you can prove you can afford more, but to make more money so you can keep more freedom. There is a danger on the other side of lifestyle inflation. Once you understand how easily spending can grow, you might start believing the answer is to spend as little as possible. That isn't the goal. You don't need to turn your life into a competition to see who can tolerate the smallest budget. Money is supposed to improve your life. The real skill is learning which spending actually improves it. Maybe paying for better health is worth it. Maybe a comfortable mattress changes how you feel every morning. Maybe taking a trip to see someone you love creates a memory you'll value for decades. Maybe paying for a service that saves you hours every week gives you time you would rather spend with your family. Those purchases can be expensive and still be completely reasonable. The question isn't whether something costs a lot. The question is whether it gives you something you genuinely value. That's very different from buying something because everyone around you has it. A useful way to think about spending is to separate things that improve your life from things that simply signal your life. The first category makes your ordinary days better. The second category mainly makes your life look better from the outside. And sometimes, of course, a purchase can do both. That's fine. You don't need to justify every enjoyable purchase with a financial return. You just need to know why you're making it. Because intentional spending feels different from automatic spending. When you choose something because it matters to you, you can enjoy it without guilt. You aren't constantly wondering whether you should have spent the money. You already know why you did. That's the balance we want. Not extreme frugality, not endless consumption. Intentional spending. Spend generously on the things that genuinely matter. Be careful with the things that only become necessary because you've become accustomed to them. And most importantly, don't let the fear of wasting money turn into a fear of living. The purpose of building wealth isn't to reach the end of your life with the biggest possible number in an account. It's to create enough security and freedom that your money supports the life you actually want. So don't ask yourself, how little can I spend? Ask something better. What is worth spending on? There's a simple question you can ask before making a major lifestyle upgrade. Will this make my ordinary Tuesday better? Not your vacation. Not the day you post the announcement. Not the first week when everything feels new. Tuesday. Because most of your life isn't made up of special occasions. It's ordinary mornings, work days, grocery trips, bills, traffic, dinner, laundry, time with the people you care about. That's where the real value of a purchase eventually shows up. A bigger house might look incredible when you first move in, but does it make your normal week better enough to justify everything that comes with it? A newer car might feel exciting for the first few months, but once the excitement disappears, does the higher payment still make your everyday life meaningfully better? A luxury purchase might get attention for a weekend, but what does it actually do for you 6 months later? This test doesn't mean you should only buy boring things. It simply forces you to separate lasting value from temporary excitement. If something genuinely improves your everyday life, that's important. Maybe it saves you time. Maybe it makes your commute easier. Maybe it improves your health. Maybe it gives your family more space. Maybe it helps you do work you care about. Those are real benefits. But if the main reason you want something is that it looks impressive when someone else sees it, the Tuesday test can expose that very quickly. Imagine nobody ever knew you owned it. Would you still want it? If the answer is yes, pay attention. If the answer suddenly becomes no, you may have discovered that the purchase was partly about being seen. And that's valuable information. Because once you start judging purchases by how they affect your actual life, instead of how they appear from the outside, your spending decisions become much clearer. You stop asking, what can I afford? And start asking, what actually makes my life better? That is a much harder question, but it is also a much more useful one. There's another question that can change the way you look at a major purchase. What will this make harder? Most people stop at the first question, can I afford it? But your future self has to live with the answer. Maybe the new house is affordable, but the larger payment means you can't comfortably take a lower paying job you actually enjoy. Maybe the new car fits your budget, but the monthly payment makes it harder to invest the amount you wanted. Maybe the expensive lifestyle looks comfortable today, but it requires you to keep earning at the same level indefinitely. That's the part a budget sometimes fails to capture. A purchase can fit your income while quietly reducing your freedom. And the bigger your lifestyle becomes, the more carefully you have to think about this. Because recurring expenses don't just take money, they create commitments, and commitments can influence decisions you haven't even made yet. You might stay at a job because you need the paycheck. You might delay starting a business because the risk feels impossible. You might keep working longer than you planned because your monthly expenses leave no room for a slower season. None of this means the purchase was automatically wrong. It means every major expense comes with a trade-off. So before you commit, ask 2 questions. First, what does this purchase give me? Maybe it gives you comfort, time, space, convenience, enjoyment, security. Those benefits matter. Then ask the second question. What does this purchase take away? Maybe it takes away investment capacity, flexibility, emergency savings, career options, or simply the ability to say, I don't need to do this. That second question is where financial maturity starts to show, because wealth isn't only about what your money can buy. It's also about what your money allows you to refuse. You can refuse a bad job. You can refuse a purchase you don't actually need. You can refuse the pressure to keep upgrading. You can wait. You can walk away. You can change your mind. And that freedom becomes increasingly valuable as you get older and your priorities become clearer. So the next time you're tempted by a major upgrade, don't only calculate the payment. Calculate the options you're giving up. Because sometimes the best thing you can buy with your money is the ability to say no. At some point, the goal of making more money has to become bigger than simply being able to buy more things. Because if every increase in income only creates another upgrade, another payment, and another expectation, then you're increasing your spending power without necessarily increasing your freedom. So what should more money actually give you? More choices. The ability to change direction when something isn't working. More security. The ability to handle an unexpected expense without your entire financial plan falling apart. More time. The ability to reduce work someday instead of being forced to work forever just to maintain your lifestyle. More flexibility. The ability to wait for the right opportunity instead of accepting the first option because you need the paycheck immediately. And maybe most importantly, more control over your life. That's the part that gets lost when wealth is measured only by visible things. A bigger house can give you more space. A nicer car can give you more comfort. A luxury vacation can give you an incredible experience. Those things can all be valuable. But money can also buy something you can't easily photograph. It can buy breathing room. It can create distance between you and financial emergencies. It can give you the ability to say no. And it can allow you to make decisions based on what you actually want instead of what you can barely afford. That's why making more money should ideally change your relationship with money, not just your shopping list. You don't have to become someone who wants nothing. You simply become more selective about what deserves your money. You stop treating every raise as permission to upgrade. You stop assuming that a more expensive life is automatically a better life. And you start asking a different question. What can this money make possible? Maybe the answer is a nicer home. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's helping your family. Maybe it's investing. Maybe it's taking time away from work. Maybe it's simply knowing that one bad month won't destroy everything you've built. That's the real opportunity behind higher income, not unlimited consumption. More freedom to choose what matters. Think back to the beginning. You make more money, your income rises, and naturally you assume your life should become more expensive. A better car, a bigger home, more expensive restaurants, more travel, more upgrades. But what if that isn't the only way to use a higher income? What if the biggest benefit of making more money is not being able to buy more things? What if it's being able to need fewer things? That's a completely different definition of wealth. Because when your lifestyle depends on every dollar you earn, a higher income can still leave you feeling trapped. But when your income rises and your expenses don't rise at the same speed, something powerful starts happening. You create margin, you build savings, you invest more, you reduce financial pressure. And eventually, you gain something that no luxury purchase can guarantee. The ability to choose. You can leave a job that isn't right for you. You can handle an unexpected expense. You can wait before making a major decision. You can help someone you love. You can take time away from work. You can say no without immediately worrying about what happens next. And none of that necessarily looks impressive from the outside. Someone else might see your older car, your ordinary home, your simple clothes, your decision to skip another upgrade. They might think you're missing out, but they can't see the choices your money is quietly creating behind the scenes. That's why the goal isn't to make yourself want nothing. It's to stop allowing every increase in income to create a new list of things you suddenly believe you need. Enjoy your money. Spend it on things that genuinely matter. Make your life better when the improvement is real. But protect some of that extra income from becoming another permanent obligation. because the wealthiest feeling may not be walking into a store and knowing you can buy almost anything. It may be walking out without buying it and knowing you're completely comfortable with that decision. The more money you make, the less you should want, not because you deserve less, but because you finally understand what is worth wanting. And that is when money stops being a way to prove how successful you are. It becomes a tool for building a life you don't need to escape from.